Welcome to this explainer. Look, today we're tackling something huge. We are going to demystify the massive, sometimes totally overwhelming phenomenon of globalization. But, we aren't just going to sit here and talk in abstract academic terms. Nope, we're breaking this whole thing down, taking it from high-level theory straight into the actual, actionable, micro-level business strategies that managers are literally using every single day. Let's get into it.
Okay, so let's actually kick things off by asking a pretty fundamental question. Is the business world truly borderless? I mean, really think about it for a second. Does a line drawn on a map actually dictate how we trade, how we communicate, or operate anymore? Or have those geographic boundaries basically become obsolete in our hyper-interconnected market?
Well, before we can jump in and manage the specific departments of a global business, like your marketing or your operations, we really have to zoom out. We need to get a handle on the giant macro drivers that are shaping this landscape. Because honestly, you can't steer a ship if you don't understand the currents of the ocean, right?
So, at its absolute core, globalization is the increasing interconnectedness and interdependence of countries, economies, cultures, and societies worldwide. And the absolutely crucial point here is that this isn't just about packing physical products onto ships and sending them overseas. Not at all. It's this deeply multifaceted thing that fundamentally rewires our economics, our politics, our technology, and even our culture. All right, so here's our roadmap for today's explainer. 1. Forces driving globalization. 2. Theories behind the trend. 3. Marketing on a global scale. 4. Managing a global workforce. 5. Optimizing global operations. And finally, 6. Strategies for market entry.
Let's jump right into part 1, forces driving globalization.
So the actual engines driving this whole thing basically fall into 4 distinct pillars. Economically, we're seeing trade liberalization, which is basically just slashing tariffs and removing barriers to make international trade a breeze, along with a massive surge in foreign direct investment. Then, technologically, the explosion of information and communication tech, combined with massive e-commerce giants like Amazon or Alibaba, means businesses can reach global consumers literally in an instant. Politically, we're talking about widespread deregulation and the creation of huge international groups like the World Trade Organization. And finally, socially, we are seeing unprecedented cross-cultural exchange and migration. These 4 drivers, they are the absolute engine room of the modern global economy.
Moving right along to Section 2, Theories Behind the Trend.
Now, when scholars look at globalization, they actually use a few different lenses, and it's fascinating to contrast them. On one side, you have modernization theory. This view sees globalization as a natural, almost inevitable result of economic and technological progress. Basically, as societies industrialize, they naturally connect. But then you have world systems theory, championed by folks like Emanuel Wallerstein. And this takes a completely different angle. It frames globalization as a product of capitalist expansion that deliberately creates a global division of labor, which in turn leads to unequal power dynamics between wealthy core countries and developing peripheral ones. Same global data, 2 totally distinct ways of interpreting it.
And we definitely have to look at a couple other critical perspectives here too. Dependency theory, for instance, focuses on historical legacies, arguing that wealthy nations exploiting poorer countries' resources and labor actually perpetuates underdevelopment. And alongside that economic view, we have cultural convergence theory, looking at the social side. This theory warns that Western values and consumer products might dominate, potentially eroding diverse local cultures into one homogenized global culture. Think about how you can find a McDonald's or a Starbucks in practically every major city on Earth. These theories are just a really good reminder that globalization is absolutely not experienced the exact same way by everyone.
Okay, zooming in now for Section 3, Marketing on a Global Scale.
Global marketing is, honestly, a high-stakes balancing act. When you're dealing with diverse cultures, you just can't use a one-size-fits-all playbook. You have to use market segmentation and localization. Think about global fast food chains rolling out spicy, highly localized menus in India to match regional tastes. Then, to get that massive global reach, you lean heavy on digital marketing and e-commerce. But, and this is a big but, you have to dodge legal and taboo risks, which means strict compliance with local regulatory and cultural norms is completely non-negotiable. It's a tricky puzzle, right? Keeping your global brand identity strong while relentlessly tweaking the details to respect local customs.
Let's pivot to Section 4, Managing a Global Workforce. Because let me tell you, expanding globally means your HR department is about to get infinitely more complex. It is way more than just hiring. If you're relocating staff internationally, you suddenly need dedicated expatriate management, figuring out visas, housing, helping them adapt culturally. And with geographically dispersed teams, HR has to set up flawless remote work and virtual collaboration systems. Most importantly, though, Dealing with differing global standards requires total compliance with a crazy maze of international labor laws. We're talking navigating very strict EU worker protections on one hand versus at-will employment in the US on the other. It is all about building an inclusive, legally airtight workplace across, well, all the time zones.
Next up, Section 5, Optimizing Global Operations.
Let's break down the physical reality of moving goods across borders, because it takes serious precision. In Step 1, a company has to master strategic sourcing and offshoring. That means evaluating suppliers globally to balance out your costs against geopolitical risks. In Step 2, they need to apply lean and agile manufacturing. Basically, producing only what is needed exactly when it's needed to cut out waste and stay incredibly responsive to sudden market shifts. And finally, Step 3 is technology integration. This is bringing in stuff like IoT, AI, or blockchain to maintain total transparency across massive supply chains. Imagine having an unhackable, totally transparent ledger of where every single widget is at any given second. It's a real game changer.
And that brings us to the climax of our explainer. Section 6, Strategies for Market Entry. Okay, so imagine the exact moment a company actually decides to cross a border and set up shop. There's an escalation of commitment here. The absolute most basic starting point, exporting. This is simply selling your products, directly or indirectly, to foreign customers. Because you aren't out there building factories or hiring huge local teams overseas, this is literally the lowest risk entry point for a business that just wants to test the international waters.
Now, taking a step up in that commitment level, we hit licensing and franchising. This is where you grant a foreign entity the right to use your intellectual property, your brand name, or basically your whole business model. And in exchange, you get royalties and fees. It's a fantastic way to expand rapidly using a local partner's capital, but you do have to keep a really close eye on them to protect your brand's hard-earned reputation.
Then we get to the absolute peak of our escalation curve. Beyond things like joint ventures, where you partner up with a local firm to share resources, we hit foreign direct investment, or FDI. This is the big one. It's where a company assumes total control and, naturally, maximum risk. They might do this through an acquisition, just buying an existing local business outright, or they might go for a greenfield investment. That literally means entering a foreign market and building brand new operational facilities entirely from scratch. Kind of like Tesla building a massive new gigafactory on a different continent. The whole shebang.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final, truly provocative thought. We've just walked through these massive macro drivers and the incredibly intricate micro business strategies at play. But as companies harness these global forces to drive massive growth, how do they ensure their strategies actually benefit the wider interconnected world? How on earth do businesses balance the aggressive pursuit of global profit with the absolute necessity of inclusive, sustainable development? It is, without a doubt, the ultimate challenge for the next generation of global managers. So keep that in mind, and thanks so much for joining me today.